Yes, sure, Binduji. Namaste, everyone. Welcome to Advaita Vedanta Satsang House. We are on session 35 of Bhagavad Gita. And as Binduji has reminded us, today we won't have a follow-up discussion time because Binduji has to leave right at 10 o'clock or 9:30 IST. So there are updated links, especially for Spotify. The other links are the same, but and there is an extra link provided to the book written by or authored by Artemisia, which is the imaginary door, and the links for those are pasted also in the chat. So for today, then the hand raising and the chat will remain closed. And maybe I'll open the chat just 5 minutes before Binduji ends. If you have any questions for follow-up, we can post it there, but Binduji won't be able to answer them right away. So we'll continue them on Friday or the following classes. Over to you, Binduji. Thank you.
Thank you, Prakash. Namaste, everyone. Invocation. Om Namo Brahmadibhyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartrubhyo Vamshirshibhyo Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhyaha Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loga Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashi Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murtibheda Vivagine Vyomavatyaptadehaaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The Bhagavad Gita Dhyana Shlokam. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Stunnvanti Divyaistavai Vedai Sangapadakramो Parishadai Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyandi Yam Yogino Yasyandam na vidussura suragana Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha. Om. So we were discussing verse number 68 in the last class. Tasmat yasya mahabaho nigrihitani sarvashaha Indriyani indriyarthebhya tasya prajna pratishtita. So we saw that where senses are mastered in every way, especially in the mind itself, their wisdom does not flicker. It stands abiding in the self. Now the next verse is a very tricky verse which as per many have found it intriguing and difficult to decode it. But the way in which Krishna has used it in explaining it is to bring in a very critical, clear distinction between the one who is the Chittaprajna and the rest of them. And this is one of Srinivasa's favorite verse. He had asked me at least twice for this meaning. Ya nisha sarvabhutanam tasya jagrati samyami yasyan jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato mune. This verse, before that, Shankaracharya is giving a explanation why this verse is being said by Krishna. Yo ayam laukika vaitikascha vyavaharaha sa utpanna viveka jnanasya sthita prajnasya avidya karyatvad avidya nivrttau nivartate avidyayanscha vidya virodhat nivrittihi ityetam artham sputeekurvan aha means that which is worldly, laukika, Vedic, Vaidika, and Vyavahara, transactional. Because it is a product of avidya. Which one? All the three. Laukika, Vaidika, and Vyavaharika. It's a product of avidya. Means it is not something which is permanent, eternal, like Atma. It is a transactional knowledge. And transactional knowledge, being in a transactional world, is considered avidya karyatvad, as a product of avidya. Thus nivartate, that ceases when, upon the cessation of avidya. Avidya nivrittatau tad nivartate. For the one who is steady in wisdom, sthita prajna, in whom the discriminative knowledge, viveka jnana, has risen or arisen, and the cessation of avidya comes about through its being opposed to vidya. Vidya virodhat, avidya nivritti. Making this meaning very clear. So here, this, as per Shankaracharya's understanding and assumption and commentary, he is bringing that this is between the avidya and jnana. The sthita prajnasya jnana, or the knowledge of the sthita prajna, and avidya of other worldly people. So ya means what? Nisha, the night. Sarva bhutana, for all living entities. That means the night which is night for all the living entities. Tasyam jagrati samyami. For a samyami means for a self-controlled person or a sthita prajna. Tasya jagrati is his wakeful time. That means when the whole world is experiencing night, the sthita prajna is in his waking. Yasyam jagrati bhutani. And when the waking of the rest takes place, sa nisha pashyataha mune. This sage or this sthita prajna sees, pashyataha means sees, sa nisha, that as night. That means when everyone is having waking hours, sthita prajna is having night. And when sthita prajna is in waking, everyone else is in the night. Is this the meaning? Let us see what Shankaracharya is explaining that. The literal translation reads like this: that which is night to all beings, in that the self-controlled man is awake. When all beings are awake, this is night for the Muni or the sage who sees. So Shankaracharya's commentary is quite a long one. Maybe I may be able to do this one verse today. Ya Nisha means Ratri. Sarva Padarthanam Avivekakari Tamaha Swabhavatvad Sarva Bhutanam Sarvesham Bhutanam Kim Tat mean that which is night or darkness causing non-discrimination. Avivekakari with regards to all beings, being the nature of ignorance. Sarva Bhutanam, that means Tamas Swabhavatvad is in the form of tamas, being the nature of ignorance for all beings. Kim tat, what is that? Padartha tattvam sthita prajnasya vishayaha. It is the supreme reality, the object of the one who is with the steady wisdom. Yatha naktanjaranam ahaha eva sat anyesham nisha bhavati. Tadvat naktanjara sthaniyanam ajnananam sarva bhutanam nisha iva nisha padartha tvam tattvam agojaratvad atat buddhinam. Just as daytime itself is night for the creatures that move by night, the nocturnal birds or nocturnal animals. So too, for beings comparable to night creatures, means who are the creatures comparable to night creatures? As per Shankaracharya, they are the ignorant ones. The supreme reality is like night. Indeed, night itself, because it is beyond the scope of those whose understanding is not aligned with it. It is not the literal meaning of night and day Shankaracharya is taking. In the night, even with the best of the vision, a adult who doesn't need a correction glasses or anything, in the pitch darkness, he cannot differentiate between objects standing and this void space. He may go and hit a object. This shows that he is incapable of grasping the presence of an object in the pitch darkness. Same way, in the state of ignorance, all the bhutanam, all the creatures are incapable of knowing the reality because they are not aligned with the knowledge because of the agocharatvat, means they are depending upon their sense organs for knowing Brahman, whereas a sage or a muni or a sthita prajna, he is not having this issue of knowing Brahman because he has aligned himself by the previous slokas, what has been designed, that he has left the dependency on the sense organs and the mind for knowing the world. He has understood the whole world as nothing but pure consciousness itself. Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma. So, when this is being used immediately after explaining the benefits of sense control by Krishna, we have to necessarily take the relevant meaning of for the night and the day. Otherwise, we will not be able to understand why did suddenly Krishna talk about this, foolish statement like night is day for him, his day is night for others, all those things. So it is the dependency of sense organs and mind by the majority, whereas for the Sthita Prajna or the Muni, he is depending upon he is aligned with the knowledge aspect of it. Viveka Jnana. Tasyam Paramartha Tattva Shanayam Ajnana Nidrayam Prabuddha Jagratihi Samyami Swayam Samyavan Jitendriyaha Yogi Ityartaha. In that night characterized by the supreme reality, Tasyam Paramartha Tattva Kshanayam Ajnana Nidrayam, which is a sleep in the form of ignorance. Prabuddha Jagrati, the disciplined one is awake, self-controlled, master of senses, a yogin. This is the meaning of the verse. He has now only explained the meaning of the word, the verse as it is. Now is the commentary what is really explaining that. Yasya grahya grahaga beda lakshanayam avidya nishayam prasuptani eva bhutani jagrati iti uchyante. Yasyam nishayam prasuptaha iva swapna drisha sa nisha avidya rubatvat paramartha tattvam pashyataha mune. Now he is explaining what is the night and the darkness and the waking and the knowledge of a Sthita Prajna. That night, which is ignorance, characterized by the distinction between the subject and object, in which beings are said to be awake, that is, in that night, they are as though asleep, like dreamers. That night being of the nature of ignorance, this is what the sage who sees the supreme reality regards night as. This passage, where an epistemic orientation is given by Shankaracharya, does not talk about the biological weakness which defines day and night. So what night really means, Nisha, is not a physical darkness, but a tamas, that which produces aviveka, non-discrimination. Thus the ignorance itself is the night, regardless of the external light or activity. That means even during day, due to ignorance, we are unable to discriminate the name and the form from the reality of Satchidananda from them. Therefore, even though the physical light and the sunlight is there, we are in the darkness of ignorance. Why Brahman is night for the world? Because the agochara. Brahman is agochara, is not capable of being recognized. Gochara means capable of, knowing. Agochara means incapable of knowing. It is not an object. Brahman is not an object, therefore it is agochara. Not an object doesn't mean it is not a vastu. It means that it is not the objects for the sense organs to grasp it. means not graspable by ordinary cognition. Hence, what the world calls reality is day for it. What sage calls reality, the capital R, is night for the world. This is not a mutual hostility, but a mutual incomprehension capability. Therefore, the nocturnal analogy is that daylight exists for all, but nocturnal creatures cannot function in the daytime. Therefore, the Sthitaprajna does not see the names and forms, even though the names and forms are seen by the rest of the people. He sees ekatvam anupashyata. He sees the oneness, unity in all as Satchitananda. Similarly, Brahman is ever present. But when the unprepared intellect, even though it is ever present, cannot operate there. That is why it is agochara. Who is awake and where? In Brahman, which is night to the world, the samyami, the yogi, is awake. Or Sthitaprajna is awake. In the world of object-subject division, which is capable only through the sense organs, the beings are said to be awake, but they are actually asleep, dreaming in the eyes of a Sthitaprajna. Because they are not seeing the reality, they are imagining the reality of the names and forms. The ordinary waking is a dream with an ignorance. So we have to understand the two nights which is being referred. The night of ignorant people and the night for the one who knows the reality. So avidya nisha, the ignorance with the subject-object division capable only to be used and perceivable cognition by the sense organ. Therefore, the world thinks it is awake. Brahmanisha, the non-dual reality, because there is no multiplicity in a night, in the darkness. That multiplicity not being perceived but seeing that non-dual reality, there the sage alone is awake. It is not a mystical rhetoric, but it is a epistemological inversion. So the world sleeps while thinking it is awake. The Sthitaprajna wakes where the world cannot see. The day and night are not in the sky. They are in the orientation of the understanding itself. Okay. So what does it help us by knowing this? This decisively settles the adhikara, eligibility between karma and jnana. Only when Shankaracharya explains this, we can understand how we have to understand this. Ataha karmani avidya avastayam eva cha udyante na vidya avastayam vidyayam hi satyam udite savitari sarvaram iva tamaha pranasham upagacchati avidya. Therefore, actions are enjoyed only in the state of ignorance. Understand that. Actions are enjoyed. Please understand the word. Only in the state of ignorance. Not in the state of knowledge. Because when the knowledge has truly risen, like the darkness at night, when the sun has risen, the ignorance is destroyed. That is, when the sun rises in the morning, the darkness of the night vanishes. Same way, when the knowledge arises and we move to a sthita prajna state, the ignorance and the consequences of the ignorance, that is enjoyment of actions, they all vanish. We do not become the doer or enjoyership. The doership and enjoyership goes with the knowledge. Prat vidya utpatte avidya pramana buddhya grahyamana kriya karaka phala veda rupa sati sarva karma hedutvam pratibhadyate. Na apramana buddhya grahyamanayaha karma hedutva upapatti. Prat vidyaya utpatte. Before the rise of the knowledge, avidya pramana buddhi grahyamana. Ignorance, when apprehended through the valid means of knowledge. Ignorance, when apprehended through the valid means of knowledge, means ignorance appearing in the form of distinctions of action, agent, result, etc. This is happening when we depend upon our sense organs, which are the valid means of knowledge. And that becomes the cause of all actions. There is no possibility of ignorance apprehended without valid cognition being the cause of action. Na apramana buddhyad grahyamanayaha karma hedutvam upapatti. That is, no possibility of ignorance apprehended without valid cognition being that. Only when we are apprehending the truth as truth perceived by the sense organs, we feel that there is action, enjoyership, etc. But without the sense organs, depending upon the sense organs, the avrita chakshu, one who is now reversing the vision to see the pratyagatman, the atman within inside ourselves. For him, there is no dependency on the valid sense organs for the means of knowledge. Because swaprakashatvan, it is self-revealing nature of the self. Yasya punaha nisha iva avidya matram idam sarvam veda jatam iti jnanam tasya atmajnasya sarva karma sannyase eva adhikaraha na pravurtav. But for the one who has the knowledge, all this manifold of distinctions is nothing but ignorance, like night. For that knower of the self, eligibility lies only in the total renunciation of action, not in engagement. He is renouncing the doership and enjoyership. Tadacha darshayishyati tad buddhi tad atmanaha in the 5th chapter 17th verse. Tad buddheha tad atmanaha ityadinaha jnana nishtayam eva tasya adhikaram. Accordingly, Krishna will later demonstrate this, beginning with the verse, those whose intellect is that, whose self is that, etc. Showing the eligibility only in steadfastness of the knowledge for those who are in the Siddha Prajna. This passage is, as I said earlier, doctrinally decisive. Here Shankaracharya closes the door for any attempt to combine knowledge as knowledge with action and obligation. That is Jnana Karma Samuchaya. Why karma belongs only to avidya? Karma is enjoined only where ignorance is in operation. Knowledge and injunction are mutually exclusive. Injunction, the vidhi, nisheda of Veda, and the Atmajnana of the Veda are mutually exclusive. Why? Because karma presupposes difference, the doer, deed, result, etc. Whereas knowledge reveals non-difference, non-dual reality. When the sun rises, darkness does not cooperate or has no way to be present there. It disappears. There is crucial role for valid means of knowledge. Ignorance motivates action only when structured by the valid means of knowledge. Pramana. Veda presents ignorance as if real for pedagogy. Thus, I must do this because Veda said so will motivate for action. But all this is ignorance alone will release you from the doership. This shows that karma requires functional belief in difference, not mere illusion alone. Therefore, knowledge cancels the eligibility of action. The one who knows all differentiation is ignorance, like the night. Then the very ground of obligation also collapses. There is no agent left to be commanded. Therefore, Shankaracharya insists that the knower's eligibility is only for the sarva karma sannyasa, never for the continued ritual or the duty-based actions which is stemmed out of the ignorance. So Shankaracharya explains that, this has a continuity in the verse 517. Tad buddhaya tad atmanaha. Those established in knowledge have intellect resolved in Brahman, have self resolved in Brahman, and they are beyond the karma's jurisdiction. This is not a later innovation. It is already operative here now itself. So, if you think that knowledge perfects karma, Shankaracharya says no. Karma continues after knowledge? Again, no. Knowledge adds to obligation? That also is no. That means knowledge dissolves the very field in which obligation arises. So, where knowledge dawns, duty does not continue. The sun does not share the sky with the night. For the knower of self, renunciation is not a choice, it is the only possible posture left. Tatravi pravartaka pramana abhave pravritti anubhavati iti chet. Now there is a question from the opponent. If it is objected here that the absence of motivating means of knowledge, activity would be impossible. Na. Swa atma vishayatvat atma vijnanasya. Because self-knowledge has self itself as its object. Therefore, it is negated. Nahi atmanaha swa atmani pravartaka pramana apekshata. Because the self does not require a motivating means of knowledge with respect to itself. That means to swapravartaka. Atmani pravartaka. One cannot climb on one's own shoulders. Precisely because it is the self. Tad andatvat cha sarva pramananam pramanastvasya nahi atma swarupa adhigame sati punha pramana prameya vyavahara sambhavati. Moreover, all means of knowledge terminate there. Their very status as means of knowledge ends in that. For once, the nature of the self is realized. The transactional framework of means of knowledge and the objects of knowledge is no longer possible. That is, for once the nature of the self is realized. For those who have realized the transactional framework, including Vedas, means of knowledge, pramanas, objects of knowledge, is no more possible. Pramadritvam hi atmanaha nivartayati antyam pramanam. Nivartayat eva cha apramani bhavati. Swapnakala pramanam iva prabodhe. Loke cha vastu adhigame pravritti hedutva adarsanat pramanasya. Indeed, the final means of knowledge eliminates the very status of the self as the knower. And in eliminating that, it itself ceases to be the means of knowledge. Very important statement. The final means of knowledge eliminates the very status of the self as a knower. Even the Vijnadaram, that knowership of the self, is eliminated. And by eliminating that, it itself ceases to be a means of knowledge. Just as the means of knowledge operative in a dream ceases upon waking. That is the Swapna Simhavat. The lion in this dream woke us up from the dream by scared of that pouncing of the lion. But that lion has no validity after waking up. Same way, the Vedas and the Upanishads, all Shastras, and not only that, all the Panchendriyas, Shabda Sparsha Rasa Rupa Gandha, mind, all of them are products of ignorance. Once the knowledge is achieved, what we call it as self, that self word, the Brahman word, everything which was depending upon the Vedas and the Upanishads, they become inoperative upon realization. Just as the lion became non-valid on waking. Tasmat na atmavidaha karmani adhikaraha iti siddham. Therefore, it is established that the knower of the self has no eligibility for action. Because he doesn't see activity at all. He doesn't have the action. How there be an action when you are all the one? Like the space. Can the space act upon itself? Can the awareness act upon awareness itself? Or the incognition or not the cognition. The consciousness, can it act upon itself? Can that consciousness know itself? Can the awareness know itself, awareness itself? No. This passage answers the last remaining objection. If knowledge ends injunctions, doesn't the absence of motivating pramana make all activity impossible? The Shankara says that no. That is why the explanation was given. An object other than the knower, there is no. Therefore, he requests no pramana for the true knower. But one who knows other than the knower, there is an object, or him a pramana to motivate pursuit, etc. In self-knowledge, the self has its own object. Requires no motivating instrument. Why? Because the self is already that what one is. There is nothing to pursue, avoid or produce. Thus the demand of a provoking pramana is a misplaced pramana. Pramana paryavasana, termination of means. Shankaracharya states a crucial Advaitic principle here. All pramanas end in self-knowledge. Please understand that. When the self is known, even the knowership or the knower-known split collapses. The very function of pramana dissolves. It is not because knowledge is defective, but because it has completed its purpose. What has completed the purpose? The means of knowledge and the knowledge or the shastras, etc. Why pramana becomes apramana? That is why the dream example is important. The dream pramana upon waking becomes apramana. Same way, the pramana, which is the shruti and the indriyas, removes the ignorance. In doing so, it removes the pramatritva, the knowerhood. The shruti is the one which says that you are that, tad tvamasi. When that is known, there is no pramatra. Pramatra means knower. And there is a pramanam separately for him. Pramanam means means of knowledge. Because he has become the knowledge itself. Therefore, the shastra, the sense organs, all self retires. There is no further epistemic transaction left. No pramana is seen to cause action after knowledge. Very common sense statement from Shankaracharya. In daily life, once an object is known as what it is, no pramana continues to impel action towards it. This is what is called the Vastu Tantra. Vastu Tantra means when an object is known as what it is, then there is no further activity required to know it further. You may have utility of that object. That is not what we are discussing about. The pursuit of knowledge, when it meets its end by giving the knowledge, then that means of knowledge has no further utility. The knowledge ends its pursuit. It does not initiate further action. The final verdict on adhikara means the eligibility from all angles, whether it is epistemic, experiential or logical. The knower of the self has no eligibility for action whatsoever. Not because action is forbidden, but because the very basis of obligation has vanished. The knowledge does not provoke action, it ends the very role of the provoked. And when the self is known, the knower by the means and the mandate all fall silent together. It's interesting here if we have compared how we stack up Shankaracharya's commentary with Ramanuja and Madhva on this particular verse. We will do it slowly, line by line, without bringing any doctrinal leakage from the other chapters or other slokas. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasya jagrati samyami yasyan jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato munehe. So first line is Ya nisha sarva bhutanam. That which is night for all beings. Shankaracharya's crucial identification, nisha is avidya. Night is ignorance whose nature is tamas and aviveka. He explicitly glosses that which causes non-discrimination for all being. Paramartha Tattva, Brahman, is the night for the ignorant because of its agochara or not being an object for perception. Because the ignorant depends upon the sense organs for knowing things. Meaning, what the world cannot see or transact with, the non-dual self, that is their night. Day or night is not a physical, ethical, or it is epistemic here. Whereas Ramanuja says that night does not mean Brahman itself. He is refusing Shankaracharya's stand that night is Brahman for the ordinary people because of agocharatva. It means inability to appreciate the spiritual truth due to karma. For Ramanuja, the night is ignorance of one's dependence on Narayana, not non-duality as such. Meaning, ordinary beings are asleep to the devotion and surrender and not really in itself. Therefore, no collapse of world knowledge into ignorance. Madhvacharya gives a strong realism on that. Night means lack of knowledge about Vishnu and the hierarchy. Not ontological ignorance, but a moral doctrinal blindness. Meaning, souls differ in capacity. For many, higher truth is inaccessible. Night is graded ignorance, not a universal avidya, which Advaita says. The second lies is Tasyam Jagrati Samyami. In that night, the self-controlled one is awake. Shankaracharya, this is a radical inversion. In the night of Brahman, which the world cannot grasp, the Samyami or the Siddha Pratnya or the Zen master, one who has mastered the senses, Yogin, is awake. Why? Because he is established in Paramartha Jnana, the non-dual vision, not perception. The sage is awake where there is no object at all to perceive. He is awake to the reality. Whereas Ramanuja may says that awake means actively conscious of God, engaged in devotion, not withdrawn from the world. The key shift is awakening is equal to heightened relational awareness, not a transcendence of subject-object duality. The devotee is awake to God, not as God. Awake to God, not as God. Whereas Madhvacharya says awake means vigilant obedience, clear doctrinal understanding, unwavering devotion to Vishnu, no epistemic inversion, only spiritual alertness. Now the third statement is that Yasyam Jagrati Bhutani, that in that which beings are awake. Shankaracharya says that this line is devastating in the hands of Shankara. He says that beings are awake in avidya nisha. That is the realm of subject-object duality. Worldly awaking, dream-like cognition. Waking is like dream. What we call as waking life is still sleep within ignorance. Whereas Ramanuja says here, awake simply means engaged in the worldly ritual life, conscious of moral distinctions. No suggestion that waking is illusory. The worldly life is real but incomplete. But Madhvacharya says, awake means engaged in duty, perception and choice. Worldly cognition is fully valid. That means the world is fully real. And the last line is that is the night for the sage who sees. Shankaracharya completes the inversion. The sage sees the Brahman. Pashyataha munehi. Therefore, the world of distinction is night to him, because there is no distinction in the vision. He doesn't see duality. Ekatvam anupashyataha. Not rejected violently, but rendered epistemically irrelevant. The sage does not deny the world. He no longer wakes into it. That is what Shankaracharya says. For Ramanuja, the sage does not see the world as night. He sees it as God's body and acts within it. No epistemic negation of the world. Whereas Madhvacharya says that the same resistance, the world remains fully real. The sage simply prioritizes Vishnu. No inversion of cognition. So to give a comparison at a glance, the meaning of night as per Shankara is avidya, Brahman akochara. Ramanuja says lack of devotion, Madhva says doctrinal ignorance. What is the meaning of waking? Shankara says non-dual knowledge. ekatvam anapashyata. Ramanuja says it's devotional awareness. Madhva says obedient vigilance. The worldly waking, that is the ordinary people waking. Shankaracharya says that it is sleep, like a dream, like the waking is like a dream. Ramanuja says it is valid but inferior. Madhva says it's fully valid. And ontologically, Shankaracharya depends only on non-dual Brahman. Ramanuja is qualified non-dualism and Madhvacharya is on dualistic realism. So the fault line in this verse, this is the verse which is differentiating between. Shankara reads this epistemical reverse as what the world calls knowledge as ignorance, what it cannot see reality. Ramanuja and Madhva must soften this because accepting Shankara's reading would dissolve karma's reality, collapse devotional duality, and force acceptance of Jivan Mukti as action transcending. This is why Shankaracharya Bhashya is unusually explicit and sharp. I'll stop it here. The questions on this, I know all of you may be having a lot of questions. Listen to this again tomorrow. Maybe I can devote the entire tomorrow for question answer session. I don't mind going. We can wait for the following day and Friday I may take the class then. In that case, it's better to do the discussion tomorrow. I leave it to you. Let me know when the class starts. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Thank you. Dhanyavada. See you all tomorrow, same time. Good night.
Bindoji, and thanks everyone for coming. And as Bindoji mentioned, we will commence today. If there is enough potential for Q&A, we'll go into Q&A because we have a lot of material to do manana with, especially comparison with Madhvacharya and Ramanujacharya with reference to Shankaracharya. And on that note, have a great day, everyone, and I will close the room shortly.